Today I'm going to talk about prosody when you are reading out loud. So prosody, when you're speaking or you're reading out loud, it has to do with how fast you are talking, how your voice pitch goes up or down, and other things like that. Phrasing, adding little pauses in there. So you want to be able to speak in a natural manner so that other people understand you. And in standard American English, what's a normal prosody for speaking may be different than what the prosody is in your native language, where you put your stress in the sentence, what words get emphasized, which ones are louder, whether your pitch goes up or down as you're talking. So I'm going to read here a section from the first part of A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens, and that's simply because it is in the public domain and I can use it if I want. So here we go. And pay attention to where I put pauses and when my voice goes up and down, which words I emphasize or not. I'm going to exaggerate what I would normally do here for this first time. So it's going to be even more over the top. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. We had everything before us. We had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven. We were all going direct the other way. In short, the period was so far like the present period that some of its noisiest authorities insisted on its being received, for good or evil, in the superlative degree of comparison only. Okay. Believe it or not, that was one sentence. And I picked this because I wanted to show how even if a sentence is super long, it can be divided up into parts. Most things that you read nowadays won't be made of sentences quite this long. Some might, but not usually. So every time you see a comma is a good place to make a little pause. Take a breath if you need to. So if you're going to split up your sentences into maybe 4 or 5 words like this. It was the best of times, pause. It was the worst of times, pause. It was the age of wisdom, pause. It was the age of foolishness, pause. All right, so I put my pauses in there and that was good, but at the same time, everything I read was kind of the same pattern. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. You see how I kind of went up and down with that? It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. Most sentences and phrases do kind of have that curve to them. It was the best of times. But also because the word best and the word worst are important to the meaning of the sentence. It was the best of times. If we said it was the best of times, it was the worst of times, it would be confusing because there's no comparison. We have times and times. We want to compare best to worst. So it's going to go up and be louder maybe. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. In addition, since we are contrasting the best and the worst, we're going to make best and worst different. Best is good, right? We want to be best, so I'm going to keep going up. Worst is not that good, so maybe I'm going to go down. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. So we have the good, we have the bad, we have the good, we have the bad. It was a season of light. It was a season of darkness. So we keep going on and on about good and bad, so up and down. So, see, I covered putting in phrases where there are commas. So put in pauses where there are commas. We want to emphasize the important words because that's what we are trying to learn and contrast. The best of times, worst of times. Good will go up, worst will go down, because we want to communicate to our reader through our prosody a little bit more of the meaning of the words. Even if I didn't know what the words were, and I was listening to you, and you were doing this, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. You could tell by my voice going up and down and by the expression on my face, this was good, this was bad, right? So that's what we want to do with our speaking. We had everything before us. We had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven. We were all going direct the other way. And notice how I emphasize the other way. That's because we want to bring out the fact that some of us were going a different way. The other way, the other way. In short, the period was so far like the present period that some of its noisiest authorities insisted could be an important word, on its being received for good or for evil in the superlative degree of comparison only. So when you are talking or when you are reading, make sure that your voice is going kind of up and down in all these different ways.